Hey, everybody. I want to thank you for joining us tonight for the Progressive Candidate Summit. I'm so glad that you're here. I know that some of you were with us when we did part one. That was back in April. There were 15 candidates, all of whom did an extraordinary job. And I want to make sure that you go to candidatesummit.com in order to have the opportunity to see the 4-minute videos that each one of them did. And for you to know what tonight is, this is part two. There are 8 new candidates. I want to talk politics with you a little bit here, if I might. We will be having next year, of course, actually this year, this summer, there will be the primaries, and all of the people that you are seeing here tonight will be in their primary elections. These are all running for the Democratic Party, and they will explain themselves who they are and what they are running for. Now, we have 435 districts, congressional districts, and Abraham Lincoln said that there is not that much evil that any government in the United States can perpetrate as long as the people remain vigilant. And when he said that, he was speaking very specifically to the idea that every 2 years we have the opportunity to replace the entire House of Representatives. Now, as we all know, we took civics when we were kids. Even though every 2 years there are congressional elections for House of Representatives, the Senate elections are staggered. So, for instance, 2 of the gentlemen that you will be meeting here tonight are running for the Senate, one in Wisconsin and one in Florida. Now, I want to have a real sort of honest conversation with you here about what really goes down in politics in America. The party elite, and this is true of both parties, are looking for people to run. And first of all, we all know we have these problems, these issues with gerrymandering and voter suppression and all of that. But even beyond that, when the party establishment elite is looking around for who to run, this is the question that they often ask. Can you self-fund? Now that's code for, you have $1 million, you have at least 500,000. That's what they're looking for. There is so much undue money, particularly corporate money. There is so much money, our political establishment, it's a big business. So when they're looking for people to run, the people that will be supported by the establishment, usually these are people who have $500,000 sitting around, who have $1 million or access to that kind of money. Given that, why should any of us be surprised at the legislation which is so commonly passed? Because how are we going to have more legislation that really supports the working people of the United States when the working people of the United States have such a difficult time becoming the policy makers? Now, we are living in a time that is very similar to another era in America that was called the Gilded Age. Mark Twain called it the Gilded Age. Before the Civil War, we were mainly an agrarian society. After the Civil War, the Industrial Revolution occurred, first in England, then here in the United States. And with industrialization came tremendous wealth creation from mining, from the railroads, from the banking, the business sector, finance, et cetera. But also with that came tremendous wealth inequality. And even though tremendous wealth was created, there was also great hardship and suffering. People, immigrants and others, immigration was a great issue then because so many people were immigrating into the United States because of this opportunity. But many people were locked in sweatshops. Many people were locked in the economic shackles of the wealth inequality of the time, et cetera. That lasted from basically after the Civil War all the way till the end of the 1890s. And what happened then was that the people rose up. And the Gilded Age was followed by what was called the Progressive Era. And the Progressive Era then lasted until like in the 1920s, et cetera. With the Progressive Era came much what we're feeling now. People pushing back against the overreach of capitalist forces, people pushing back. You had the rising up of the unions, you had the passage of child labor laws, et cetera, the end to sweatshops, et cetera. A period where people very, very much wanted to regulate People wanted to, what was happening there then is so similar to what's happening now. Anti-monopoly, antitrust, regulatory agencies, and so forth. And we are entering, just as we are now in a great golden age, we are entering a progressive era. But people who could run for office, one of the great progressive presidents, of course, was Teddy Roosevelt. People running for office in the progressive era that followed the Gilded Age could do so. All they had to do was walk down to the registry and say, I'm running. But today what we have is a situation where so much money floods the system and the corporate elite that dominates. We have this unholy alliance, guys, a very unholy alliance of the shadow side of American capitalism and the shadow side of the American government. We've got this corrupt holy alliance, and basically it peripheralizes the average American. Now, the reason we're here tonight is because those of us who want to see a new progressive era in America know that in order for that to happen, we need to get progressives into government. We need to get progressives into Congress. Now, what are the progressive issues? The progressive issues have to do with the kind of structural changes which will push back on a situation that has been created over the last 40 years, which is basically constituted a theft. And when I say a theft, what I'm talking about here is a massive transfer of wealth into the hands of a very, very few people, that 1% of Americans, so that we have a second Gilded Age today. We have as much wealth inequality today as we had 100 years ago. We had, even before the pandemic, we had 40% of Americans who could not afford a $400 unexpected expenditure. Now, when you have government where the policymakers are mainly the kind of people I mentioned, not that they're not nice people, it's not, no socioeconomic group has a monopoly on morality or being nice people. This is not about nice people versus not nice people. It's about systems that are unjust, specifically economic systems that are unjust, to the point where you have people in Congress who have no problem saying, oh yeah, $763 billion for the defense budget, $2 trillion for nuclear bombs over the next 30 years, who have no problem with the 2017 tax cut that gave 83 cents of every dollar to the very richest corporations and individuals, put the corporate tax rate down to 21%. It should be going back up to 35%, which is where it was before that tax cut. The middle class tax cuts in 2017 were a good thing. The Democrats should have passed them themselves. But we still haven't moved into the real fundamental changes that will liberate the economic hopes and dreams of the majority of Americans. For that, we need structural change. So what we have now, even the best of congressional action, is people who sit there and they talk about whether or not to send people $300, whether to send people $1,200. There are people in Congress sitting there, with their paternalistic, arrogant, serious faces about whether or not to send some person who's having a hard time feeding their children $1,200, and that person spends $1,200 at dinner. We need a new progressive era in America. And for that, we need progressive candidates. But as I've already said, the party elite are the first obstruction. So I'm introducing you, as many organizations, PACs, et cetera, do, to people who are representative of the people who are actually living the real economic conditions and social conditions in this country, and have the calling in their hearts, have the skill sets, have the abilities to go in there and make the kinds of changes that we need. And when I say the kinds of changes that we need, I mean the serious structural changes. You've got one political party in America that has been bought and sold by this corporatist mentality that, that was ushered in by Ronald Reagan 40 years ago. Whatever is good for big pharma, whatever is good for health insurance, whatever is good for gun manufacturers, whatever is good for chemical companies, whatever is good for big agriculture, whatever is good for big oil, whatever is good for the military industrial complex. You've got the other party that wants to help people on the periphery, but in too many cases is not willing to challenge the underlying forces that make so much suffering inevitable. And even now, and Biden is doing some good things, it's good that he's, going to fight the monopolies and all of that. But the suffering is so great among so many millions of people right now. And the planet itself, that we're moving, it's too little, too slow, too fast in too many cases. And that's why I want to do everything I can do. And I know that you want to as well, if you're even watching tonight, to usher in a new progressive era in the United States. This is where the energy is. But if we want this, we need to fund these people. So you see the link, last time we did this, when we did part one, over 50,000 people watched. And if all of the 50,000 people who watched had given $1, that would have been such a windfall for those 15 candidates. Tonight, we have 8 additional candidates. So I hope that Susan or whomever, please, Lauren, put in the chat the donate link now. You see the donate link underneath us on the Twitter. You see the donate link underneath on YouTube. You see the donate link on Facebook. I hope you will go. If you don't see it, Lauren, I'm waiting to see it up here. I hope it'll go there soon. I hope that you will think of these people. And I'm telling you, it costs money to run. And that's what really makes all the difference. And if people are representative of some of the working class circumstances that we most need to have in Congress, that means that a lot of them are working full time, et cetera. But these are the best and the brightest. These are the kind of people that we need to have. My own mentor and colleague and friend, Howie Klein, we've worked very closely together in terms of identifying candidates who not only know their issues, not only have the kind of skill sets that will enable them to go in there and work on these issues, but who have the heart and soul that they're going to champion these issues. And that's why we have chosen them. And that's why I'm excited to introduce you to them. Like I said, go to candidatesummit.com, please, so that you can see the videos that were made in the first summit, so that you can see that. And I hope that you will support these people if you feel moved in your heart. Now, this is how it works. If you go to the donate link, and I hope that somebody, Lauren, is somebody going to be putting it up in the chat?
It's in Facebook and Twitter.
We can't get it on the chat here? Okay, wherever you are, you can see it. And you can see it on donate. You can see it on candidatesummit.com. If you, let's say you give $10, in giving $10 or whatever your donation is, if it's just put in there, it will be given divided evenly among all the candidates. So that has to do with the 8 tonight plus the 15 from before. But you might want to do the Dropbox. You might hear somebody tonight and go, wow, I really want to help him, or I really want to help her. So feel free to give individual donations as well. And that's it. First, before we do anything else, I want to take this opportunity, since we have some people here tonight who were from the first as well. I just want to take an opportunity before we start with the individuals, and those who are here, unmute for a moment and just wave so that everybody can see you. These are some wonderful people.
Hi.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Vote progressive.
Hi.
Okay. All right. Let's get started. Our first candidate this evening is a young gentleman named Tyrell Anderson. And Tyrell Anderson is running in Alabama District 2. This includes Montgomery and Dothan. And he is a graphic designer. He is a political activist. I'm very glad to introduce you, ladies and gentlemen, Tyrell Anderson.
Hello, everybody. Thanks again for being here tonight. And I'm glad to be amongst many of heroic progressives in this summit. Thank you, Marianne, for the endorsement and for joining us all together. My name is Tyrell Anderson, and I am running for Congress in Alabama's 2nd Congressional District. I am an American worker and political and social activist as well. I am from Montgomery, Alabama, the birthplace of the civil rights movement. I grew up, in most of my childhood, I grew up in a single parent household, just my mom and my 2 other siblings. My mom worked many different jobs to provide us with a roof over our head, food on the table, and clothes on our back. And that goes the same for many other kids and family members in my community. I grew up in public housing and went to public school as well. One lesson that I learned from my mother is that there's always a hustle or grind to make ends meet. I learned the art of hard work from my mother. I grew up around mostly Black women, and I have a strong respect for Black women from seeing them, just take on the mantle and provide and take the lead in communities as well. I don't come from a family of political and social activists. I don't come from a family with a heavily educated background. Although my mom did instill in us that education was very important, but I do come from a family of hustlers and survivors, where surviving was mostly the only thing they knew in a country like this. As a child, I always asked the question of why. Why are things the way they are in my community? Why do people act the way they do? Why is it so hard for us? And with that, it being the question that I always ask, it led me to get involved in political and social justice and activism. I suffered under the current healthcare system. I've suffered under the current education system. I've suffered under the current trickle-down economic system, and I watched my people suffer tremendously under the current criminal justice system. As I continued to dive into politics for years, I began to lose faith in our system and our leaders. I felt as if I was wasting my vote on too many broken promises and too many leaders that were afraid to stand up for what is right. As an American worker, I felt the impact of low wages and having to choose between a decent meal or buying groceries and paying bills, and wondering if I would ever be able to afford the luxury of a vacation or the luxury of just living, or the luxury of just living instead of just living to only survive. It was people like Bernie Sanders, Cori Bush, AOC, and a host of other progressives that inspired me to run for Congress. It was the message of, if you want to see change and be a part of, then just be a part of the solution. I didn't think that a person like me could ever run for office until I saw people with the same passion and care for other people as me to get me to this, that made me decide to run for Congress to be a part of change. Now, I chose to run for office because with my whole heart, I actually care that we end suffering in this country for so many people. Just like many people in this country, I am tired of living just to survive. And just like so many people in this country, I am fed up with the current system that allows the wealthy to profit off the backs of the hardworking people of this country. And while these people keep the companies open, while the owners of these companies give them little to no benefits as possible to survive. And the current trickle-down economic system, to me, is like modern-day slavery. I believe that everyone in this country is entitled to health care, which is why I want to help move the needle towards a Medicare for all system. I think that all kids deserve a quality education, which is why I'm for expanding the public education budget and adding life essential classes to the schools. I care that workers in this country are able to live and not only live just to survive, which is why I'm for expanding the minimum wage to $15 or more. And I care about the future generations of this country having a safe and beautiful planet they can live on. And this is why I want to why I push for environmental justice, and I'm for things like the Green New Deal. Now, I want to be a congressman because I have a passion for peace and happiness. I believe that everyone deserves a quality life and every citizen deserves justice. I won't be an ordinary politician. If I'm elected to Congress, I will make it my duty to keep the people informed on every aspect of everything that's happening in Congress, from why bills are being stalled to who voted against bills that helps the American people and how the people can help the process of getting these bills passed. I don't believe in compromising on common sense bills that deals with the right of human citizens or American citizens or citizens.
Tyrell, I have to stop you because if I don't keep everybody to 4 minutes and the people after you won't have the time to share. But thank you very, very much. And when Tyrell was just talking about the issues that he stands for, I want you to know the issues that every one of the candidates stand for here. And that's one of the sort of prerequisites to be one of our endorsees. Medicare for all, Green New Deal, free education at state colleges and universities, to raise the minimum wage to at least $15, UBI, and to erase the college loan debt. Those are the structural issues. And of course, we were talking about tax issues before. We were talking about the military industrial complex, the defense industry, et cetera. However, those issues that I just mentioned are the basic core issues represented by all the candidates you're going to meet here tonight. Our next candidate is Raleigh Bowman, who is running in Illinois District 5. He's a union organizer, a healthcare advocate. Happy to introduce you, Raleigh Bowman.
Thanks, Marianne. Thank you to all the wonderful candidates and everyone for being here tonight. My name is Raleigh Bowman, and I am running for United States Congress to truly represent the people in Illinois' 5th District. The 5th District includes parts of Lake Michigan, Chicago, and smaller underrepresented cities and towns. I am unequivocally a proud union member and organizer. I'm an activist and advocate and activist for workers' rights, healthcare, and mental health. I have always fought for the underdog because I know what it's like, and firsthand I've witnessed and experienced the injustices within our society. When I was a child, my father was severely injured due to pre-existing conditions that forever changed my family's life. My father ended up needing multiple surgeries and ongoing healthcare that we just simply could not afford. So we suffered in silence. Ultimately, this caused my family to lose our home, our stability, and just simply the ability to live. And this is because our elected officials chose decades of policies over people, and they continue doing that to this day. For us and millions of people in this country, going to the doctor is and was a luxury, but we shouldn't have to live like this. Ultimately, my father, after decades of issues and struggling to get the help and care he needed, passed away 2 years ago unexpectedly because our elected officials failed him. My story, though, tonight isn't just mine to share with you. This is a story of millions of people all across the country struggling to get the care that they need. My entire life, I've been fighting for others because I know what it's like, and I've always been putting people first, to fighting against corporate greed and better working conditions. My opponent, the current incumbent, has been in office since 2009. In that time, he has taken millions of dollars from special interest groups, corporations, and his billion-dollar friends. He has actively advocated against healthcare for all and progressive policies that would put our people out of poverty and uplift them and transform lives as we know it. He's been silent most of the year as our district is seeing unprecedented crises. We have a mental health crisis, a health crisis, a housing crisis, a climate crisis, and a lack of representation for all of us. One of the largest freshwater systems in the country is being destroyed because our elected official, the incumbent, would rather defend his billion-dollar donors than take on the climate crisis facing our district and our nation. Communities are being left behind and pushed farther into poverty while corporations and my incumbents and billion-dollar donors continue to see record profits. And it's time we change that. It's time we end the cycle of greed and politicians that work against our best interest, my community's best interest. I say we don't like having leaders who don't fight for people. I don't like having a society that doesn't put our people first and that guarantees education without crippling debt, healthcare as a fundamental human right, and a system that works for all of us, not just the few. You know, our right to life, the American dream, equal opportunities, and a healthy planet, inequality is a heck of a lot more important than a corporation's bottom dollar and a politician's wealthy donors. I'm not afraid to fight for our community. And I will continue fighting for our community and progressive policies that can radically transform the lives of our people. This campaign may come to an end, but I'm gonna ride it until the wheels fall off, fighting for all of us. To learn more about our platform and about me, who we are, and what we stand for, I encourage you to visit RaleighBowmanForCongress.com and join our movement, because together we can win this and transform our district to work for all of us and not just the few. Again, my name is Raleigh Bowman and I'm running for Illinois District 5. Thank you.
We need people like you in Congress, Raleigh, and we're not going to join you in the thought that this campaign is going to end. We're going to join you in the thought that you will be in the U.S. Congress, and the consciousness that all of us share, that that's not only possible, but that we're going to help make it happen tonight. That's why we're here. Raleigh Bowman, Illinois, District 5. Once again, if you're hearing candidates here tonight that you would like to invest in their campaigns, you would like to invest in their careers, then I hope that you will remember these are not corporate-backed candidates. These are not establishment-backed candidates. They're not going to get the corporate money. And there is a real schism in the Democratic Party today. You see it playing out in Ohio in Nina Turner's race. There are the corporatist establishment Democrats, and then there are the progressive candidates. And tremendous money is being used actually to make sure that some of these progressive candidates don't get anywhere near the seats of power. If you want them near the seats of power, you and I, we're going to have to pay for it. I hope you'll go to the donation link, and no amount is too small. Okay, now our next candidate is an old friend of mine. And one of the reasons he's an old friend of mine is because long before I had ever met him personally, he was someone who inspired me politically so much. Some of you are too young to remember when Alan Grayson was such a progressive firebrand in Congress who did so much to open up the space for people such as Bernie Sanders and others who now stand in the light of the very kind of politics that he stood for. He is a three-term former congressman from Florida, and now as a staunch progressive champion from a purple state. He is running in the primary to be the Democratic candidate to take on Marco Rubio. And this will be just one more where you've got the establishment candidate and then you've got Alan Grayson. Welcome. Wonderful to introduce you to my friend, Alan Grayson. We need you to unmute, Alan. Hey. Sound's not working.
And how about now?
Hi. Yeah.
Okay, great. You can hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. Thank you very much, Marianne. You are an inspiration to millions, and I appreciate that warm introduction that reflects our profound friendship. Thank you very much for that. When I was in Congress, I was the only member of Congress out of 435 who raised most of his campaign funds from small donors, which we're asking you to help with tonight. Think about that. 434 members of Congress who were on the take, who were catering to billionaires and lobbyists as if they were short order cooks, making up the laws for them, cutting the laws into little tiny pieces and selling them to the highest bidder. And then there was me. And I passed 121 laws in my last 4 years in Congress, more than any other member of Congress, because I was not on the take. And I could pass progressive laws that are badly needed. Look all around the country today. Look in every Democratic primary in so many different places, my primary, other people's primaries. You'll see that there are candidates like us, like the people who are participating on this call tonight, like Marianne Williamson, candidates who are champions of progress, not just progressivism, not just an ideology, but progress itself. Better paying jobs, healthcare for everybody, increasing Social Security for the first time in 50 years, extending Medicare to cover your eyes, ears, and teeth, taxing people no more than we tax corporations. Somebody explained to me why it is that that corporations get to write off their rent and human beings can't do that. Free public education, paid sick leave for everyone, and healing the environment. These are the issues that bring us together tonight. These are the issues that need to be adopted to make America a better place. That core central idea that we can make the world a better place is exactly what brings us all together tonight. And the only way that that can happen is if we all combine and fight back against the racism of the other side, the homophobia of the other side, the conspiracy theories of the other side, the virus facilitation of the other side, the gun nuttery of the other side, and voter suppression, all the way down the list, all the things that they do in lieu of trying to make the world a better place. Our secret weapon in Democratic primaries and in general elections all around the country is that we're willing to tell people what they will do for them. In so many places around the country, we see primary candidates in the Democratic Party who basically promise nothing. They promise people nothing. All they're doing really is promoting themselves. And yet we have progressive candidates like the ones here tonight who do exactly the opposite. What you see is what you get. When you vote for me, when you vote for another candidate here tonight, what you see is what you get. The campaign promises of the Progressive Party going back to 1912 and 1924. What you see is what you get. We have to make that happen for the simple reason that the people united will never be defeated. That's the way it was in my 3 races for Congress. That's the way it needs to be in my race this year for the Senate. I invite all of you to join in something bigger than yourselves and make sure that the people whom we elect are working for us and not for themselves. We want to elect people who don't just want to be something. We want to elect people who want to do something, and that something is to make the world a better place. Thank you very much, Marianne.
Alan, thank you. And I want to ask you a question, Alan, because you're one of 2 Senate primary candidates here tonight. You running in Florida and also Chris Larson running in Wisconsin. And I want to ask you a question that I know is on a lot of people's minds, and the same question will come up with Chris. Everybody knows who Marco Rubio is. And there are some Democrats who feel it's a purple state. Some people feel afraid to go with a real progressive candidate. They think, oh, we have to go with this kind of new, it's almost like the Republican light type of more moderate Democrat. They feel that that's a better person to put up against Marco Rubio. Would you please tell us why you think a real progressive like you has a better chance of beating Marco Rubio?
Of 50 years of history, as Howard Dean said more than 10 years ago, you can't beat them by being like them. The people deserve a choice. They don't deserve the choice between someone who is a Republican and someone who acts like a Republican. That's an insult to the voters. And show me one race anywhere around the country where that notion that if you act like a Republican, you're going to win Republican voters actually succeeds. The Republicans aren't fooled by that. It's only the Democrats who get fooled by that kind of reasoning all too often.
So true. Thank you. Alan Grayson, Florida. Thank you so much, my friend. Thank you. Now, the next candidate, it's an interesting thing because what we're talking about this schism in the Democratic Party. And one of the things that we've seen, you see it with Jamal Bowman, you see it with AOC, you see it with Cori Bush, you see progressive candidates who have taken on sometimes establishment icons. And in a few cases, they've won. And our next candidate is someone who is taking on an establishment icon. And I'll leave it to her to explain to you why she's the one who can do it. I want to introduce you to Queen Johnson. She's running in New York's District 8. Queen Johnson.
Thank you, Marianne. So my name is Queen Johnson. I'm a community organizer, a mutual aid giver, a public servant, and I am a human rights activist running for U.S. Congress in New York 8. I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York in the 90s. My mother was a working class single mother. We lived in a public housing development, high crime area. Our housing conditions was not the best, but it was considered home. My mom received government assistance and I received a public school education. I am not new to protesting at all. At the age of 13, I was protesting alongside Alice Sharpton against police brutality. My neighbor, unarmed 19-year-old Timothy Stansbury, was shot on my roof building by an NYPD officer. Of course, they called it an accidental shooting, but it was nothing accidental about this crime that the officer committed. As a mother of 3 young Black sons, 8, 6, and 4, I refuse for my sons to become another hashtag. And I refuse for our children to continue to grow up in an injustice system that the odds are against them based on the color of their skin. History is continuously repeating itself. And why is it? Enough is enough. This is why I am fighting to end qualified immunity. So all officers are held accountable for abusing their power in Black and brown communities like my own. Growing up in poverty, I knew I wanted to do more for my community. Although I couldn't afford to go to college, I did receive a college education. I took out the loans that were necessary and I made it my mission to pursue my bachelor's degree in economic analysis because I wanted to study How could I get my community out of the cycle of poverty? And I learned by creating and improving access to jobs, raising the minimum wage, investing and implementing agricultural programs, reforming our criminal justice system, and providing all people with access to basic social services, which includes education, healthcare, adequate food, sanitation, shelter, and clean water, are ways to reduce poverty. While completing my degree, I landed a job as a Medicaid eligibility specialist for the city of New York, and I was a part of a recertification unit. Why do we have a recertification unit when it comes to healthcare? And the heartbreak I experienced for having to tell someone they aren't eligible for healthcare, our human rights, based on a criteria made me sick to my stomach. That is why I am fighting for Medicare for all, because no one deserves to be denied healthcare based on a determination. My run for U.S. Congress is about protecting and putting the people first. I'm running against Hakeem Jeffries, a career politician who has created a pact to keep progressive candidates like myself out of office. But no pact will keep me silent. No pact will stop me from fighting. And no pact will be bigger than my community. As the people, we demand a Medicare for all because it will save thousands and millions of lives. As the people, we demand a housing guarantee to close the gap on the homelessness population. As the people, we demand a Green New Deal to tackle the climate crisis that we are all experiencing as a nation. As the people, we demand a justice reform to end our injustice system. As the people, we demand to abolish ICE and reunite these innocent children with their families. And as the people, I'm fighting for racial, social, and economic justice for everyone. And I won't stop until all of our demands are met, because that is what is owed to us. Not only do I have a bachelor's degree in economic analysis, I also have a PhD in this thing called life, something that Hakeem Jeffries can't even buy. To all who are listening and watching tonight, make sure you are supporting our progressive movement and continue to exercise your voting rights and community involvement, because it does take a village. We have a long way to go, but the first step is supporting progressive candidates and electing them into office for change to start happening. And to New York 8, if you are watching tonight, I just want you to all know that I do love you. We are in this together. And please remember, it is always more of us than them. To all who is watching, if you would like to learn more about who I am, about my platform, please go to queenforcongress.com. Once again, my name is Queen Johnson, and I'm running for U.S. Congress, New York 8th District.
I mean, come on. If you don't have it in you to want to put this woman in Congress, I mean, hello. I so hope that you will go to the donate link. And I feel when I hear Queen talk, I feel, I know this is kind of weird. It's not weird. I remember the first time I saw Madonna. She was doing a video, Borderline. And there are some people in politics and music and art, and you go, whoa. That's how I felt just now listening to Queen. And perhaps you did too. And if you did, I hope that you will go to that link and that you will give money right now. Queen, you have great courage. You have great courage to take on Hakeem Jeffries, who, like you said, had the pack to make sure that people like our candidates tonight don't get near the seats of power. I hope that, I don't just hope, I know that you'll go very far. Okay. Now, our next candidate tonight is another Senate candidate, and that is Chris Larson, state senator from Wisconsin. And he is running for the Democratic chance, the primary and the Democratic primary, for a chance to defeat a real Republican icon, Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin. State Senator Chris Larson, welcome.
Thank you, Marianne. Thank you so much to all the other candidates, and thank you to everybody who is here tonight joining us to make bold progressive change across America. I am very happy to be part of this coalition, to take on the big money and to take on the necessary fight for the future of America. I'm running for US Senate here in Wisconsin against Ron Johnson. We need this seat to build the Senate majority and stop Mitch McConnell from halting our country's progress after the pandemic. But beyond that, with the larger majority, you can stop Manchin and Sinema from being the deciding votes on the future of our country. We can end the filibuster. We can pass crucial democracy protections like S1, the For the People Act. As we've seen, it's important not just to elect any Democrat to the Senate. If we want fundamental change, we have to elect proven progressive fighters. I am the best candidate to beat Ron Johnson and end the rigged system, because whenever I see an injustice, I stand up, I bring my neighbors with me, and I fight back. When I was a college student and saw the political establishment line up behind the insider candidate who was a climate change denier, I stepped up and ran. And even though I was working full time, finishing college, and got engaged, I went door to door through the snowiest winter in 50 years and won, even in a district that Scott Walker won with 66% of the vote on the same day. When I was in that office fighting for my neighbors, I saw a 14-year incumbent from my party standing on the wrong side of history, standing against a women's right to choose, standing for Betsy DeVos's destruction of our public school system, and standing to deny climate change in favor of the fossil fuel lobby. I knew I had to run. I wasn't sure I would win. Even after the chairman of the Democratic Party threatened me and anyone that helped my campaign with being outcast from the party. We built our own voter file. So anybody that has the van knows how hard that can be. We did that from scratch. And then we did the other thing, which is building a grassroots coalition to beat the incumbent by a 20-point margin in 2010. And how important was that? Well, just 6 weeks after being sworn in, all 14 of our Senate Democrats left the state. And I helped lead that effort to stop then Governor Scott Walker in his attack on our public school teachers and other public employee unions. We left the state for 3 weeks to stall the vote and allow my neighbors a chance to be heard in what turned out to be the largest protest in Wisconsin history. Since then, I've continued to fight back against Scott Walker until he was defeated from office and Republicans in our rigged legislature. But I've also pushed forward with what we need to do by authoring and co-authoring just about every progressive piece of legislation, from increasing the minimum wage to $15 an hour, ending the tip differential, to opening up government transparency and getting big money out of our politics. I've also worked to build more leaders along the way by conducting trainings for grassroots leaders and politicians, building leadership and helping elect over 36 people to office, from local school board all the way to statewide office. Now, I'm using that coalition and that knowledge and that effort to take on the worst senator in America, Ron Johnson. Rojo represents the worst of America. Since taking a trip to Russia in July of 2017, he's been a mouthpiece of Putin's disinformation about the 2016 campaign, about the Biden family, and about the insurrection that tried to overturn democracy earlier this year. He's called climate change BS and done all he can to prop up the fossil fuel industry in the process. But worse, and this is important for across the political spectrum, he's also corrupt. When he ran in 2010, he spent $9 million out of pocket, only to turn around and pay himself a bonus out of his company's coffers of $10 million. In 2017, he refused to pass Trump's regressive tax cuts, but not for noble reasons, because he wanted a sweetheart deal for himself and his business. Once that was added in, he voted for it and helped vault his family to be richer and vaulted him to being the 6th richest US senator in our country. With your help, we will beat Ron Johnson. We will restore dignity to this seat that was once held by our hero, Russ Feingold, so that American government looks more like a caring family and less like a corporate business. So I ask you to join me in winning this seat, passing a Green New Deal, passing Medicare for all, passing a wealth tax and a corporate tax to end the largest wealth inequality in human history, and by right-sizing our military's budget, and so much more. I ask you to stand with me by donating, by volunteering, by helping me and the other candidates to end the rigged system in American politics. I encourage you to head to voteforlarson.org to find out more and get involved in any way you seem you're appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Chris, as with Alan, these Senate races, everybody knows how important these Senate races are. There's going to be a lot of attention given next year. We've got Florida and Wisconsin, 2 Republican senators. You've got Marco Rubio in Florida. Democrats are going to want to know who should be the candidate. Wisconsin, very similar, Ron Johnson. And there are people, this whole idea about the progressive candidate. I know that there's a lot of conversations already going on in in Wisconsin. Can you tell me in one sentence of all, because it's not just which Democrat, it's which progressive. Why you, Chris? One sentence, why you?
Right. I mean, anybody can pick up the badge of progressive and wear it for a day. You have to have somebody who's been wearing it, living it, and trying to push for other progressives to get in office. Real leadership builds other leaders, and I've been a progressive leader all my career. You can look at the record.
Good for you, and good luck to you. Thank you so much. Okay, our next candidate is running for Congress. I hope that you have pushed that donate link, even if it's just $1, $2, $3, $5. Maybe push the every month. I hope that you feel, as I do, how important it is to help these kinds of candidates get their leg up, get the chance to actually have campaigns that are competitive in this very, very important upcoming election cycle. Our next candidate is a woman named Sheila Sherfilis McCormick, and she is running for Congress in Florida District 20, and that includes West Palm Beach and Broward counties. She's an attorney who has worked in healthcare for more than 20 years. Here she is, Sheila Sherfilis McCormick.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me on here. Marianne, I have looked up to you and everything that you've done to move the progressive movement forward. And so it truly is an honor for me to be here this evening speaking to everyone. And I am a mom, wife, and I've been CEO for a healthcare company now for the last 10 years. And I actually got into it because I'm a little Haitian girl whose parents came from Haiti, first generation, and I just fought hard all my life. All I heard was no. I put myself through law school and I was getting my MBA. My daughter was diagnosed with a learning disability while I was going through law school. And then I started fighting and her teacher started supporting me to get the resources, but I just kept on hitting a brick wall. At that time, I started seeing the other parents who were with us looking for resources, and I ended up having to take a year off. In that year, I started realizing that it wasn't just me. And I went to our elected officials. I went to other people to see if they would fight for my family, if they would fight for me as a single mother to help get my daughter the resources she needed, but they didn't. And it was at one point when I realized that it's like I was being cemented into poverty. My student loans were killing me. I was paying out of pocket for different therapies for my daughter. I was doing everything that I was supposed to do in society to make it, but yet there was a prison to school to prison pipeline that was built for me and my family. And something clicked inside of me that said, not me, not today, and not us, not my community. And that's when I got up and I fought. I started advocating in Congress to ensure that we had healthcare. Healthcare was going to include mental health, and that our children was going to get the resources they needed. I fought night and day for 10 years going to Congress on my own dollar to make it. As I started moving and talking about the Affordable Health Care Act, we started experiencing a tremendous amount of success, and our business grew. We started having a vocational school where we taught over 1,000 people how to get their licenses as an LPN, a CNA within the communities. We immediately saw an economic turnaround. During the pandemic, we even were able to acquire a federal contract, which we were servicing the entire state of Florida. And at that time, we hired over 1,000 people and no one got paid less than $20 an hour. Everything they said we couldn't do, we did it. Everything they said we couldn't acquire, we acquired it. And it was only because I had the will and the want to. And I realized that no one is going to fight for me and my family and the community unless they've been in my shoes. No one ever expected this little Haitian girl to grow up whose parents came to the United States fleeing a dictator. No one expected me to be here. And, they messed up for letting me be here because now I'm fighting for us. My mother was a maid. She worked at the Waldorf Astoria. I saw her every single night fighting. And I swore to myself I would work every single day and I would live in my community, raise my daughter here. There's no reason why she should be displaced. There's no reason why we don't have healthcare. There's no reason why we can't live in the United States and all have an equal chance at living. This is the problem, and this is why I fight. So everybody asks me, what makes me so different than everybody else who's in my race? This is a special election. And I tell them one thing, I'm unbought and unbossed, and I'm tenacious. No one will stop me from fighting for my family. And you guys all know how it is. When someone comes for your daughter, your family, or your mama, it's a wrap. And so that's what I'm here to do. I'm fighting for all of us. And so I ask everyone to support us in this fight because we're on a cusp and we have to ask ourselves, as we're celebrating all these first women, a number of women, minorities, Where do we take it further? When do we prioritize equality, social equality, economic equality? As Marianne stated in the beginning, we're on the cusp. We see that there's money being distributed federally for recovery. Are the people being prioritized? We can't let this moment slip by us without us being prioritized. And that's what I'm there to do. I don't get a pay raise by going to Congress. It's not going to give me a better job by going to Congress. But what it does do, it allows me to actually leave our mark, a progressive mark, where we actually take back the people's seat away from the lobbyists. We need to have the people represented and not the corporations and the people who enjoy taking their money and watching our demise. Once again, my name is Sheila Sherfless McCormick. You can reach me at any moment for Sheila for Congress. We have a People's Prosperity Plan. We're proposing a $1,000 stimulus check where we can have an economic release for the entire country, which would be proportionately. We see that many people right now, many mayors are pushing their own UBI system, and that is based on their own funding. That is disproportionate. We actually need a plan that's economic recovery for everyone. Let's think of everyone, every American, every family, no matter who you are. Your dog is your family. Families are so diverse. It's time for our families to evolve and move forward, and we are here to do that today. And I thank you, Marianne. I thank you, all the candidates who are here as we fight together to move this forward. And I look forward to seeing every one of you in Congress as we bring this fight to them and take back the people's house.
Oh, Sheila, I am so inspired by you. That's Sheila Sherfless McCormick. Bring Sheila back up for just a moment, Leslie, so I can ask her a couple of questions. Sheila, yours is a special election. Is that correct? You don't have what everybody else has, which is these primaries in May or June or August. When is yours? Why is it a special election? What's your situation?
We have a special election November 2nd. The incumbent was Alcee Hastings. He was in office for the last 30 years. I actually ran against him. And when we ran against him in 2020, we were told that we will never get past 12%, that other elected officials who ran never cut 12%. We actually ended up with 32%, and that was the People's Movement. So now we have 11 people in the race, and we're ready.
Okay, and it's in November.
Yes.
Okay, everybody can give a little added love to Sheila Sherfless McCormick at the donate link, because she needs money faster because her race is in November. And I was extremely inspired by you, Sheila, as I'm sure other people were as well. We were talking earlier, everybody, about the movement of into the progressive era at the end of the 1890s, beginning of the 20th century. This was led by women, because this was the advent, the beginning of the women's movement at that time, moving into the women's suffrage movement. It was women and Christian ministers. You know, I have a little bit on this topic because so many people in my experience, you know, talking about those from spirituality and religion, almost like we should stay out of the political lane. I think it's time for a lot of Americans to read a little bit more American history, you know, because there's never been a great social justice movement that was not inspired and motivated and in many ways led by religious and spiritual leaders. So much of the abolitionist movement came from the early evangelicals in New Hampshire. As I already just mentioned, you're talking about the idea of the progressive movement at the end of the 1890s. Women were leading this. Of course, obviously, the civil rights movement was led by a Baptist preacher, Martin Luther King Jr. So when I hear both Sheila and Queen tonight, the idea of the women who led the progressive movement and led us into the great progressive era, when it happened before coming out of the Gilded Age. What I hear in Queen and what I hear in Sheila is exactly the spirit that our ancestors had. Okay, another wonderful candidate here tonight. Once again, I hope you're not forgetting that donate link. It's sort of my job to ask you, so I hope that's okay. And like I said, there is no amount too small. This is a great candidate. He's already mayor of Delano, California, and you're going to like him. Brian Osorio, and he's running in California, District 21. Mayor, nice to introduce you.
Thank you, Marianne. And thank you all for allowing me to be in this space with you. I am really enjoying the people-powered energy that we are creating that has been fostered for many years. My name is Brian Osorio, and I'm the mayor of the city of Delano. For those who don't know of the city of Delano, California, it is the birthplace of the farm worker labor movement that was spearheaded by leaders such as Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta, Larry Itliong, Philip Vera Cruz, and many more. I'm also the only progressive candidate running in California's 21st congressional district. For some context, CD21 is between the districts of Devin Nunes and Kevin McCarthy. I'm running against Republican David Valadao in a D+5 district. Yes, in a D+5 district, a Republican has continued to win, and this is why we need a progressive candidate. But let me take a few steps back. There are a few reasons why many of us are here today, why we took time out of our day to hop on a Zoom and are running for office. But the reason I want to focus on is hope. We are here today to feel inspired that our future can change. And feeling a sense of hope is the first step to actualizing change. I need each and every one of you to hope that we can all make an impact in our communities. Because when we do that, we have the possibility to get involved with a local organization, to volunteer at a local shelter for our unhoused community, or to even run for office. And we have 8 endorsees this evening who represent this hope. Our communities have been neglected time and time again here in the Central Valley. The climate crisis has deteriorated our air and water. Our immigrant communities are constantly under attack, even under a Democratic administration. And many of us have been left uninsured in the middle of a pandemic. A little bit about myself. I am the son of Mexican immigrants who moved to the Central Valley in search of a better life. I was the first in my family to graduate from high school and the first to graduate from college. I was granted these privileges by the grace of the community that raised me, and that's why I decided to run for office. Before graduating from college, I organized a march against immigration and customs enforcement due to a tragic incident that led to the death of 2 farm workers who had just dropped off one of their children. I saw firsthand the absent leadership in my own community from local, state, and federal leaders. It was only the United Farm Workers who issued a statement asking for accountability. This led to my first run in 2018 when I ran a grassroots campaign for Delano City Council, centering the needs of farm workers, teachers, immigrants, and seniors, the backbone of our community. I won my seat with the highest number of votes out of 4 candidates, including 2 incumbents. And it's because people are so tired of seeing the status quo being championed. It's more important now than ever to have leadership that centers the voices of working class families, the voices of my community. We can no longer accept representatives that prioritize special corporate interests over people. We need someone that represents the communities that call the Central Valley home. All of our relentless commitment to centering working families, communities of colors, immigrants, starts by supporting Medicare for All, a Green New Deal, and humane immigration reform. This would represent the kind of leadership that we need in Congress to create that tipping point in which real change is actualized. We need to send a clear message to Washington that we are not going to side with corporations, but side with working class families. We will elect leaders who are on this call, who will not only support Medicare for All, but will continue championing policies that benefit Central Valley families. Because let me tell you, there's a difference between supporting something and championing something. Too many leaders are more interested in keeping power than doing something with it. I understand it's not about myself getting to Congress. It's not about getting these 8 endorsees into Congress. It's about getting all of us to Congress. And that's how we start to win. By centering the needs of everyday folks. Our advantage is that we have people behind this movement that will get us across the finish line together. Because when we come together with volunteering, providing support, or even sending a donation this evening, we push the movement an inch further across the finish line. So please send what you can to all the candidates here, including myself, to show Washington that people will not only fight, but we will win. Once again, everyone, my name is Brian Osorio, and I'm running for Congress because my story is a story of many Central Valley families, and I will take it to Washington. Thank you.
Mayor Osorio, thank you very, very much. I wanted to talk just for a minute about his race. So he said he's in between Devin Nunes and Kevin McCarthy. That's as red as you can get. But he said that his district is D+5. He's already the mayor there. There is no reason there should be a Republican holding that seat. And he also said a couple of really important things that I want to mention. He talked about how people are tired of the status quo being championed. We're all tired of the status quo being championed, but the status quo will not disrupt itself. And that is why we are here. If we want a real disruption of the status quo, a real shift, a real fundamental shift, then we have to make it happen. And I have such great admiration for all of these candidates because I know what it's like to run for office. This is not easy. I have great admiration, and I hope that everyone who is watching will show them the kind of support that comes from knowing that people actually did what they could to put their campaigns forward. Also, something else he talked about was the difference between supporting a position and actually championing that position. There are a lot of people in Congress now who say they're progressives, but they're not actually taking a stand for the progressive issues that might actually challenge the corporate dominance that they feel they need in order to receive corporate donations, et cetera. So once again, Brian Osorio, and he is already mayor of Delano, California. Something else that he said is a very historic area. He talked about the farm workers. He talked about Cesar Chavez. My brother worked for Cesar Chavez. When I was a young woman, I well remember the great boycott, and also the fantastic Dolores Huerta, who I have the honor of knowing myself. She's, wow, what a district, what a historic and important place you represent. All my very best to you, Mayor Osorio. You're going to go far. Okay, and our last candidate is also a wonderful, wonderful one, and that is Salem Snow, whose story is wonderful. He's from Northeast and North Philadelphia. He works on affordable housing projects, food distribution for low-income and high-risk residents. He lives in Philly with his partner, but he'll tell you more about that. Welcome, Salem Snow.
Thank you, Marianne. And thank you so much for inviting me this evening. It is truly an honor to share the stage with everyone here. And thank you to everyone watching. I'm so grateful to have a moment of your time to share my journey with you and the struggles of working class folks in my district and across the country. My name is Salem Snow, and I am a housing activist in Kensington, Philadelphia. I'm also a socialist, running for Congress in Pennsylvania's 2nd District, which is North and East Philly. My journey started as a poor gay kid who lived in a small rent-controlled apartment with a single mother. Growing up, my mother waited tables to make ends meet while also going to school and taking care of our family. We struggled for as long as I can remember. At 16, I took on 2 jobs to start supporting myself as much as possible. But no matter how hard we worked, we could barely get by. And that's exactly why I'm running for Congress. No matter how hard we all work, we always seem to struggle. And that's a journey the people in our country and the folks of my district know all too well. Our district is the poorest in the state, with an average income of only $20,000 a year. We are suffering from the housing crisis, no health care, and the opioid epidemic. Meanwhile, my opponent takes money from the big pharma corporations responsible for the opioid epidemic. And to be clear, I have lost friends to the opioid epidemic right here on my own street. I've lost friends and family to our failed healthcare system run by corporations that buy politicians like my opponent to ensure that they do not give us Medicare for all. But we see every injustice. We see 500,000 folks without houses in a country with over 17 million vacant homes. We see Black and brown communities terrorized and brutalized by police as the police fund politicians like my opponent to ensure that we see no accountability and no justice. We see killers of LGBTQ folks walk free because of gay and trans panic laws, while my opponent refuses to support legislation to end these laws and bring justice. As weapon manufacturers pay off politicians like my opponent, we see violent US intervention in other countries, and those victims of imperialism see no justice. When the pandemic hit, politicians failed to meet the moment for working people, but they exploited the moment for their wealthy donors as Congress members like my opponent voted for corporate bailout after corporate bailout. Millions of Americans lost our jobs, our incomes, while Congress helped the billionaires increase their wealth by over $1 trillion. I'm running because I've seen firsthand the oppression from our corrupt government and the politicians who uphold the sexist, racist, and homophobic system, but I have seen no justice. It is time to stand together and say that we are not asking for it anymore. We are demanding justice. We will have justice for our Black and Brown communities, and we will have justice for the LGBTQ community, and we will have justice for the working class. If you believe, as I do, that we need true justice, housing and healthcare as human rights, a decent living for everyone, reparations, and so much more, then I ask you to join me in this fight for justice. I am Salem Snow, and I am running for Congress in Pennsylvania's 2nd District. My website is salemforcongress.com. Donate what you can today and join me in our revolution for true justice. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Your own personal story is very touching, and also the way you describe the situation of so many millions of people in the United States who are shackled by economic conditions that simply should not be so common or even existing at all in the richest country in the world. And everybody who's watching here tonight knows that we need systemic change. We don't just need a little tweaking here and a little tweaking there. We need serious, fundamental systemic change, such as the policies that have been talked about by all of the candidates here tonight and that are talked about by the other candidates that you can find at candidatesummit.com. Some of you might be thinking, yeah, well, I live in Texas, so why does it matter to me who's running in Pennsylvania? But of course, we all know the answer to that. It has to do with the math. It has to do with the kind of winner take all. Who controls the House? Who controls the Senate? And that's why we not only need for a certain party or certain voices to be present in Congress making these policies, we also need the kind of heart and soul and consciousness that was demonstrated by all of the candidates here tonight. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you for being with us here tonight. I want to thank all of the candidates. I want to thank my friend and colleague and mentor, Howie Klein. I want to thank Leslie Matthews. Thank you so much for helping us put this together technically. I want to thank my good friend and colleague, Lauren Selsky, who produced this event and made it all happen. So thank you so much, Lauren. And to all of you who have been watching these candidates, all of you who watched tonight, who are thinking about all this is a very serious moment in American history. And I'm very grateful to you that you joined with me and these other candidates here tonight, the other candidates who are endorsed at the candidatesummit.com. As I said before, it's a big deal to run for office. And I have such great respect and admiration for all of these candidates. They're not receiving corporate backing. They're not receiving the backing of the establishment elite, but they're receiving the backing of the spirit, the heart, the love that they made so obvious in their presentations tonight. If that love and that consciousness and that sense of where America needs to go aligns with your heart and your thinking, I hope that you will take a stand for these candidates, because once they get to Washington, they are going to take a stand for us. One of the things that Mayor Osorio talked about was hope. He talked about how we have to do something. And one of the things that is concerning to me is how I see despair that is turned to cynicism. Too much like, it doesn't matter who you vote for, it's all the same. Yes, it does matter who you vote for. We're not going to have different policies until we have a different kind of policy maker. What kind of policy maker do I want to see? Policy makers like the candidates who are here tonight and who were in part one that you can also meet at thecandidatesummit.com. When I left my own campaign, I promised that I would do what I could to continue to take a stand for these issues. And I feel blessed and privileged and very grateful to have the opportunity to share these candidacies with you so that together we can do what generations before us have done, put America back on track when we have so seriously and severely gone off track. Other generations have done it, we can too. Thank you so much. God bless you all. I appreciate it. Good night.